All right, today we're diving into a really powerful guide for anyone who grew up in an alcoholic home. We're going to look at the challenges, for sure, but also, and this is the important part, the very real path to recovery and healing. You know, the whole journey of understanding often kicks off with just one single moment of recognition. This quote really captures that feeling perfectly, that jolt you get when you realize, wait a minute, I'm not alone in this. It's that moment when your story, which you thought was so isolating, is suddenly heard in someone else's voice.
So here's how we're going to walk through this. First, we'll get into what that family experience is actually like. Then we'll look at the unspoken rules and the roles kids take on just to get by. From there, we'll explore how that stuff sticks around into adulthood, before mapping out the road to recovery, and finally, what it looks like to get beyond just surviving.
To really get a handle on the adult, you have to start with the child. So let's go back and explore the environment that shapes this whole experience, an environment that's basically built on a foundation of chaos.
Our source material makes this really clear by asking a pretty simple but powerful question. What's the real difference between what we'd call a functional home and an alcoholic one? As you're about to see, the contrast is, well, it's night and day.
In this slide, this really gets to the heart of it. On one side, you've got consistency, predictability, safety, a place where kids can just be kids. But on the other side, life is defined by chaos, inconsistent, unpredictable. Think about what that does to a child. When you have no idea what to expect, you're forced to be on high alert all the time, often taking on roles you're way too young for, just to create some sense of order. Man, this quote just nails the emotional reality of that chaos. It's about a really deep kind of abandonment. Yeah, the parents are physically in the house, but the emotional connection, that feeling of safety, the nurturing, is just not there. The kid is left feeling totally alone, even in a full house.
So how in the world does a child navigate that kind of environment? Well, they adapt. They have to. They develop these very specific, unwritten rules and roles as a way to survive the constant upheaval. The first rule, and maybe the most powerful one, is don't talk. There's this massive family secret, right? And the child learns very, very quickly that you do not talk about the problem, not inside the house, and definitely not outside the house. Everything is covered by this thick blanket of silence.
And that silence? Well, it leads directly to the second rule. Don't trust. I mean, when promises are broken over and over again, when the adults around you tell you that what you're seeing with your own two eyes isn't real, you learn not to trust other people. And even more damaging, you learn to stop trusting yourself. And finally, don't feel. In a home that's chaotic, showing your feelings can be straight up dangerous. Your feelings might get ignored or laughed at, or worse, they might actually spark another explosion. So kids just learn to push their emotions way, way down. You disconnect from them because feeling anything just isn't safe.
Now, to deal with these unspoken rules, kids often fall into specific survival roles. You've got the hero, the overachiever who looks perfect but inside feels totally inadequate. There's the scapegoat, the problem child who's always acting out, basically taking the focus off the real issue. You have the lost child who just tries to be invisible to avoid causing any trouble, feeling deeply lonely. And the mascot, the family clown, using humor to cut the tension, but really just masking a whole lot of fear. Now, this is so important to understand. These are not character flaws. They're brilliant, normal responses to a completely abnormal situation.
Okay, so these survival skills, they don't just disappear when we grow up. They stick around, and they come with a price. Let's take a look at how these coping mechanisms show up as real challenges in adulthood.
First, let's just wrap our heads around the scale we're talking about. The source estimates there are somewhere between 28 and 34 million children of alcoholics in the U.S. alone. That is a staggering number of adults walking around today whose lives were fundamentally shaped by this experience.
And that number brings us to what might be the single most important message in all of this. If this is your story, you are not alone. What felt like this uniquely terrible, isolating secret is actually a story shared by millions and millions of people.
So what does this actually look like in day-to-day adult life? Well, it often shows up as this constant need for control because you're terrified of that old chaos coming back. It's having a hard time with trust because you were taught to doubt your own reality. It's avoiding feelings because deep down you're scared you'll lose control if you let them out. It's that extreme sense of responsibility, just like the hero child. It's ignoring what you need because you learned your needs didn't matter. And it's that all or none, black and white thinking, a rigid worldview that came from a very unstable childhood. Every single one is a direct echo of those old survival skills.
But here's the good news. This isn't just a story about problems, it is absolutely a story about solutions. So let's shift gears and talk about the road to recovery, which is a real, structured journey of change.
The first huge breakthrough on this journey is something our source calls emergent awareness. This is that critical moment. It's like a light bulb going on when the denial starts to break down, and you finally start to connect the dots between the pain you're feeling now and what you went through back then. It's that aha moment of, oh, that's why.
So the path itself starts with a few key steps. First, just acknowledging your own survival. The fact that you made it through is huge. That leads to that emergent awareness we just talked about. Step 3 is what's called coming out, and that just means breaking that old family rule of silence by sharing your story with someone you trust. In all these steps, they eventually lead to integration, where the whole goal shifts from just trying to survive to actually truly thriving.
Which brings us right to the final piece of our explainer, moving beyond mere survival and discovering a whole new kind of freedom.
I love this quote from the guide because it just perfectly captures the promise of recovery. It's not about trying to erase the past. You can't. It's about building new paths forward, paths that lead you to freedom from all those old patterns and all that old pain. And so this whole journey really leaves us with a powerful question to chew on. What would it actually mean for you to not just survive, but to truly recover? Well, it means understanding that those very skills that helped you endure your childhood might be the same things holding you back now. And that by finally looking at the past, you can build a whole new future, a new path to freedom.